Welcome to the Aging Well podcast, where we explore the many facets of healthy aging, longevity, and resilience. In this episode, we are joined by a truly inspiring guest, Chris Vogelsang, who has faced and overcome immense challenges in his journey with non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Diagnosed 14 years ago, Chris underwent multiple treatments before being presented with a groundbreaking approach, chimeric antigen receptor T-cell therapy, at Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center in Buffalo, New York. Now, nearly 2 years into remission, Chris is embracing life to the fullest, playing tennis, spending time with his grandchildren, and even discovering love again. In this episode, we'll talk with Chris about his battle with lymphoma, the impact of CAR T-cell therapy, and how he's making the most of his second chance at life. His story is one of perseverance, hope, and the incredible advancements in cancer treatment. Chris, welcome to the Aging Well podcast. Before we begin, let's have you tell our viewers and our listeners about yourself and take us back to the moment of your initial diagnosis. What were your first thoughts and emotions?
So my initial diagnosis goes way back to about 2008, when I had gone in just for a regular blood check with my physician, and I had a low platelet count. And I then went to my general practitioner physician, and he felt in my stomach, and he said, "I think you have an enlarged spleen." And I said, "Well, what would that indicate?" And he said, "That's possible lymphoma." So it was sort of and I've been very healthy for years. I never had any comorbidities, no type of diabetes or overweight. I've always been active, always been an athlete, both in high school and college and then beyond. And so it sort of struck me as a real shock. But he caught it so early in the process that I then went to Roswell, and they said, "You're so early with this, we're just going to wait and watch." And on that protocol. And then once my spleen got large enough, they said, "Okay, it's time to treat this." And they did the typical bone marrow biopsy and blood work and determined that I had a type of cancer, lymphoma, that was an aggressive one. So he said, "We're going to treat it aggressively." So I had my first stem cell transplant in really the fall of 2009. And that was completed, I think up until about, because it was a process over time, and it was a stem cell with my own cells, versus having a donor, a match per se. And that was completed in about February of 2010. Did I say 2009? Yeah, to 2010. So that was the initial. And from there on, I was in really good shape. It took me about a year to gain back the 35 pounds that I had lost with the chemo rounds and everything. And but within 8 months to a year or so, I was feeling up to where I was before. That was fine until I had a regular um, scope to have a colonoscopy, and they saw a little bit of something, and they did a biopsy, and the cancer had returned, but it wasn't evident in anything else other than there. So they watched that, and they put me on a pill at that point, one of the biologic cancer, the chemotherapy pills called Imbruvica, one of those real expensive ones. And luckily, throughout all this, I had really good insurance. But in any event, I was on that for about 3.5 years. And in the fall of 2022, I could feel my energy level just declining. I was having night sweats. I was losing weight. So I knew that something was going on. And I um, scheduled to come in and see my doctor, oncologist at Roswell, in the Leukemia Lymphoma Center, and they did some tests and said, "Okay, it's back, and we need to treat it." And by then, I knew enough about CAR T, and I said, "So, what are my options?" First one was another stem cell transplant, but with a donor. I had 100% match, and the other one was CAR T. And I said, "So, what would you recommend?" He said, "CAR T." for the best quality of life. I said, I suspected, but I just wanted to hear it from the doctor. So I started CAR T at the end of probably November. I think we started, and that was rounds of chemo, scheduled for 3 rounds of chemo from November into January of 2023. And after 2 rounds, my lymphoma was totally clear. So whatever cocktail of chemotherapy drugs I had taken really cleared it right out, which was good. And then, as I don't, are you fairly aware of CAR T and that whole process?
I think we'll be asking you some questions about that just to kind of clarify it all for
Okay.
the
Um,
listeners and the viewers.
yeah.
But
So CAR T was the process by which they remove your T cells, one of your B cells, T cells, or your line of blood cells that fight um, all different sorts of colds and whatnot. And they took out my T cells and then sent them to a laboratory to be genetically modified. And then once they were, came back in, and I had those transplanted in March of 2023. It was, again, I lost a fair amount of weight. It was, I think I was in Roswell, is in inpatient, 8 weeks, not solid, but at various times. I did have an infection, which was not great early on in the process. So that sort of dumped me back into Roswell for a couple of weeks to. So I came out in March. I had a little bit of neurotoxicity, which is an effect of CAR T for some people, and made me a little edgy, a little shaky, I guess. But that subsided after about 3 weeks or so. I would say, and I asked the doctor, I said, "How long is it going to take me to recover from this?" And they said, "It'll probably be about a year." And I would say they were right. It's a long haul to gain back the weight and to get the strength back to where I am now. I've always been a golfer, and during COVID, I played squash for 40 years, and during COVID, I switched over to tennis. My squash was on a double squash court with 3 other guys, and my oncologist said, probably not a good idea to be in a small room with 3 other guys huffing and puffing. So I went to tennis, which I hadn't played in many years, and now I'm playing regularly, and I love it. We're in Buffalo, New York, so we're playing indoors. And then once golf season picks up, I'm back out on the golf course. So back to really feeling well and happy for Roswell, happy for CAR T. I'm just fortunate and lucky that when I went onto that pill, that gave me enough time, that 3 year time period for Roswell, then to start doing CAR T, because it hadn't been, I think before that time when I got it, it had still been in clinical trials in Sloan and then Boston too, Dana Farber, maybe some other, especially in Philadelphia, where it was really developed. So I was lucky that by the time I needed that treatment, it was then available and they had a track record with it.
Over the 14 years since you've been diagnosed, what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced?
Yes, it's a good question. I think the challenge is keeping your attitude positive. I mean, for me, because I've always been so active, my sense was, okay, I've got to do this. And I know I want to come out at the other end healthy and back to my normal life. So I never had a sense of doom. I think it was always okay. It's not a diagnosis of 6 months, 8 months, a year, whatever. It was you can come out and they won't say cured, I think, with CAR T until they have a number of years where patients are free of cancer. I think to me it was really looking forward and just staying positive at what my outcome would be. Now I will say one of the most difficult times that I did have was during my first transplant. It was a time when my wife, my late wife, was also going through cancer treatment. So both of us were in that predicament, I would say. And she had breast cancer that metastasized to her liver, and that was something that was too severe for her to overcome. And she passed away in May of 2010. So I had just finished my first stem cell transplant, and then she passed away. So that was sort of if there was any challenge, it was staying level-headed and positive, at least as well as I could for my family and friends, just to get through that part of my life.
Yeah, I was not aware that you had lost your wife in the process of all this. Sorry for your loss. And
Thank
it
you.
just, as you think of the challenge of going through and battling cancer itself is challenging enough, I can imagine. I mean, I've not gone through it, but doing it in parallel with a spouse who's terminal,
Mhm.
that's got to be tremendously challenging. What did you do to maintain your motivation and a positive mindset during those periods of your wife's decline and your multiple relapses?
I think you try as best you can to get back into the rhythm of life. It's the mundane things. It's cooking, it's cleaning, it's grocery shopping, it's whatever you need to do, you just sort of do, and you go to the hospital with your wife, or support her as much as you can. And I think, while I had recovered enough so that I was not totally debilitated. I could walk, get around, and do what I needed to do and to help her. And she wanted to go down to South Carolina and see a specialist, which we did. So driving her down there, and it's I think I had a lot of support from her, and I gave her a lot of support. And I was remarried. I met my wife about 4 months after my first wife passed away, and I would say I'm happily married, incredibly fortunate to have met my current wife, Karen. And during this past session of my CAR T, she was as supportive as I could expect any person to be. She's just fabulous. Pretty lucky in so many ways.
So, I know you kind of touched on this earlier, but what is chimeric antigen receptors or CAR T therapy, and what led you to consider this as the option?
I had I had talked to my oncologist, Dr. Hernandez at Roswell, during the time that I was on that pill, and I think he brought up CAR T would be available, and so I sort of did some reading, but really the education from him of the basics, and the cellular level, the biologic level, the incredible science that goes behind it to figure out how you modify a T cell. What do you do to attach its proteins that seek out lymphoma cells? That stuff that's not my language. I mean,
Right.
my language is here's what it does. This is what it's programmed to do: is go after and attack lymphoma cells. So, from that standpoint, I'm not a scientist. I'm not, in biology. I was always in sales, management, and so on. And so that was about as best as I could understand it, which is pretty much all I needed to know. In many ways, I don't think I approached treatment at any time saying, well, what are the downfalls? What are the bad things that can happen? I don't, my mind isn't programmed that way. My mind is programmed to say, okay, here's the challenge. You get through it, put your chin up, and make the most of it, and as best as you can.
That champion mentality.
I think so. I think so.
Yep.
Yeah.
The attitude of an athlete.
You sort of have to. Yeah. Learn from your mistakes, and keep your head up and keep going.
You probably sound like the majority of our listeners and viewers who might be in a position to have to kind of consider therapy. It's like, I don't need to know the science. Just tell me, is it going to work? And what do I have to do?
Hmm.
And so you went through a few different treatment options. How has your treatment experience kind of compared, with the CART versus the previous therapies that you did?
Well, I would say the stem cell, the first transplant and then the CAR T transplant were really pretty similar. I lost my hair, I lost weight. Chemo takes a heck of a lot of stuff out of you, and so they were pretty comparable. In both cases, it took pretty much 8 months to a year to recover. So it's almost a tie, I think. I think, well, I do think there's one difference is back in 2009, they didn't have the drugs to help with the nausea and, just that whole sense of not being able to keep food down and that. It's much more improved. And I've talked to people who've gone through transplants since, and they have some drugs that have really helped mitigate that terrible nausea feeling. So I hadn't thought about that until just now. But yeah, that would be the big difference is you're tired. You don't necessarily want to eat, but I didn't feel as nauseated as I did in the first transplant. Now, the other when I was on the pill, um, minor side effects with a pill for 3.5 years. The only side effect was a very large monthly payment for, for the that was one of those biologics that President Biden was looking at targeted. There were 5 or 6 key ones that they were trying to bring the price down. Um, After my insurance, I was still paying on average $935 a month for that pill.
Wow.
So I hit the donut hole on that one at some point. You do what you got to do. I'm fortunate to be able to have taken on that cost in my life, and but just some minor things. I had sort of dry hands and lots of splits and some other things in my fingers, but nothing that I would say would be traumatic.
Yeah, you've shared a lot of kind of like life shifting changes that have taken place as you've embarked on this journey. But what were the biggest changes that you would say you had noticed after undergoing CAR T cell therapy?
Um, I'm not sure that there were huge, moments of aha. I think I came out with feeling progressively better as the months went by, and appetite coming back, getting stronger, being more active. Remember this was also just before um, COVID set in, so
Right.
we really changed. I'm fortunate I have a house. I'm in Buffalo, New York, at western end of New York State, and we're right along the Canadian border. And I have a house over in Canada on the north shore of Lake Erie. It's only half an hour or so from where I'm sitting now in Buffalo, and we couldn't get into Canada. Canada closed the border during COVID, so we couldn't get in that summer. And then they closed the border for about almost a little over half of the summer, the next one. So while I was sort of recovering, I would say we did a lot of walking around the city. We'd go to some nature preserves just to get out and be active and get some sunshine and do that. And still, my wife and I still do a fair amount of walking, playing golf, and I get together with friends and play at different courses. So that I would say that's one of the things that helped with my attitude and with my body recovering.
Did you have any concerns or fears as you kind of went into this new treatment approach?
Not really, not really. I knew it was a transplant. I knew other people had done it. Dr. Hernandez gave me basically the sense here's after 3 years of percentage, which is very high of successful transplants. And as I said, I didn't have diabetes. I didn't have any heart issues. I'm not overweight. Um, I've just been in very good shape, and I'm lucky to say that, I think he looked at me and said, "Your outlook is really good." And as I say, I'm living proof that yes, it is. Do you know I gave a speech at the opening of the new cellular and genetic research laboratories at Roswell that were opened a while ago? So
Hmm.
Roswell Park is now has been really taking a stand to really devote the research and development of drugs at Roswell for CAR T. And CAR T is being used for the blood cancers leukemia, lymphoma, multiple myeloma, and I think there's a breast cancer, one type of breast cancer, and another type that CAR T is being used for. But the research that they're doing here in Roswell in New York State New York State approached Sloan in New York, but they didn't have the space to dedicate to doing this. Roswell did, and so New York State and some private investment and some partners in industry have developed this hub for research, and they put in now a total of 20 clean rooms. It's the largest gene and cellular therapy and research center for therapeutics in the country, maybe the world. One of the guys, we did a tour, and they asked me to speak at the opening with all the media, which is kind of how I got introduced to all the research or some of the interviews that I've done and interviewed on camera, on TV, and so on. And I got there and I said, well, how long do you want me to speak? And they said 3 minutes or so. And I said, okay. So I ran a little over, but in any event, I got there and they said the governor would be there, but the governor introduced me. And I kind of realized at that point that I was the keynote speaker. And but I think I did a good job, and I spoke about my journey, and then we rang the bell, which they have on as a cancer survivor. And then since then, I interviewed with some of the local TV stations and a number of other news outlets, Albany and a couple of others around the Northeast primarily. So. Yeah, I'm glad, as I say, I'm glad to do anything I can to help Roswell Park and anything I can to that helps patients and their families and to know or learn that there are therapies out there and there are therapies coming for other types of cancers because the research is going so quickly on what they can do to fight not only the blood cancers but other ones. And having the funds to do the research. We hope that the current budget that the federal government is looking at, and would hope that they really put an emphasis on this research to help so many people who face difficult diagnoses in many types of cancer.
Well, we always enjoy having celebrities on this podcast, so we'll chalk you up as one.
Well, no, I've always said it's been my 15 minutes of fame. It just keeps extending a little bit longer than 15 minutes, but that's fine.
That's good. Yeah, stretch it into 15, 30, 45,
Yeah.
an hour.
Yeah.
Keep milking it. Keep milking it.
Well, as I say, I am so incredibly fortunate that, as I said to Roswell, I'll do anything that you ask of me, to pay it back and pay it forward in some sense.
Yeah, I didn't connect soon enough that my niece's husband is a researcher at Roswell, so I'm going to have to follow up with them and see, what exactly he's researching, because I know he's doing cancer research there. So it'd be kind of interesting. He's kind of involved in the work that
he could be part of. I think there's many different research components at Roswell, but he could be part of the CAR T facility for the genetic and cellular research area. It's amazing stuff, and AI is really contributing to them being able to map out quickly the effects of genetic modifications. It's just exciting stuff. It's like the new frontier of medicine in many ways and in therapies. So we keep our fingers crossed for everybody.
Yeah, it's exciting. And so you have got kind of a new chance at life. What are some of the things that you prioritize now that you may not have prioritized before?
I think you prioritize what you do with your time. The people you want to be around and your families. I mean, I'm so lucky to have met Karen and how beautifully our families have come together. Karen's I married into grandchildren, which was great.
Wow.
And she has 3 and I have 3. And so when we were married, there were 2 on her side, none on mine. There are now 7 on her side and 2 on mine with 1 on the way. So between the ages of in vitro and due in May to age 20. And it's our I adore her family. She loves mine. And we just have, when everybody gets together, just being with all of them, as you know, with family, when you have an outlook that I have, is you're just fortunate to have that time and to have those relationships and see those kids grow up. Um, I have a daughter, my oldest is Down syndrome, and she lives close by. She's very independent. And I would say that Karen is as much a mother to her as my late wife Charlotte was. So we're really blessed in that way. So I think you just say, here are the things we want to do. I mean, right now I've sort of been at there are a lot of places I'd like to travel, and we've done some trips, and I keep telling her, we're making up for lost time. We're just going to do it and not waiting. I don't know how long my shelf life is, but we're going to live as best as we can. So
Have a motto, carpe memento, seize the
seize
moment.
the
And
moment. Yes.
you realize that, hopefully most of us will realize that before we get into a situation where it's like we see, in a sense, kind of life flash before us, that
Mhm.
terminality of life. And so you got, an opportunity to really kind of go for the gustos. So.
Yeah, you do. I think it's a greater appreciation for having a healthy family and appreciation for having many friends. And I have friends from high school, college, local, just a wide array. And I'm thankful for all of them and the support that I've had, and just being able to share life with each and every one.
Okay, so you've been able to return to activities that you love, such as tennis, family time. You've even discovered new love. Well, what would you say has been the most rewarding part of this new chapter?
Having the energy and the strength to really live a normal life. That's the reward, rather than trying to walk upstairs and not be out of breath, trying to walk around halfway around the block and not being able to do it. I think rewarding is just that feeling of normalcy. It doesn't have to be, a major moment. It's a cumulative sense of recovery and normalcy, and then adapting that appreciation too. I've been lucky also. I was asked to be I'm president of our local tennis and squash club here, and so I've really been engaged over the last year and a half for a major project that we've done, and just sort of I had to hire a new general manager, and I think it's just been a gratification that those have all turned out really well and fun, and working with a small team to do that. Yeah, I'm thankful for that opportunity to have done that. Really, so if I'd been in lousy shape, I probably wouldn't have accepted the offer to be in that position.
Sounds like you've taken on the attitude of gratitude that we've pushed on this podcast for the spelling of gratitude to have two T's.
Hmm.
And so it sounds like you've adopted that
Yeah,
pretty
very
well.
very much so. Yes.
So do you have any advice for others who are battling lymphoma or other forms of cancer?
The best advice I can give is that there are therapies out there now. There are things that are changing. And I'm sure if they're in good hands and have a good hospital, do what the doctors tell you to do. Take your pills when you're supposed to take your pills. Try to lead a healthy life in the meantime while you're going through any kind of therapy. But just a sense of hope that this new therapy CAR T gives, along with other ones that is not hopefully not a dire situation, that there are ways to get through it, and that hopefully they have the support of family and friends to go through that process.
What do you wish more people knew about blood cancers and the latest treatments, the latest advancement in treatments?
Well, I think if you read different, I happen to consume a fair amount of news, maybe not too much on occasion. I I was aware of CAR T just in reading some articles and seeing something come up about new therapies, and I don't go into technical um, reading, but just enough from different news outlets to read about that. And I'm sure if people Google CAR T, Google other therapies that might be out there that just gives them that sense of here's what's available and here's what's hopefully coming.
So, how has your experience shaped the way you think about resilience and aging?
Resilience and aging. I wish I hit the
Yeah.
golf ball farther. I mean,
That's practice.
I'm back on the golf course, but I hit age 70 in October. And sometimes I think, well, am I not hitting it as far because I've come through cancer, or is it because I'm 70? Well, I don't know what the answer is, but I know that it's a fact, and I still play a decent game. I used to be competitive and played in college and then afterwards on a competitive level. But now I know it's the enjoyment of being out on a beautiful green grass golf course, wherever that is, with friends or people that you enjoy playing with, and taking part in doing that.
So you just need to take that $900 you're saving from drugs and invest it into new golf clubs, because obviously that will fix your golf game.
My basement looks a little bit like a pro shop right now. At, I do tinker a lot. I've always been a tinker. I used to reshaft clubs and I always regrip clubs here and there. And I've got probably 4 different drivers down there, depending on which one I'm getting a new shaft here and there to try. And so I'm a tinkerer in that respect. But I also do a lot of work around the house. We have this house in Canada, and I do a lot of things. Stay busy up there. As I say, and I've got some rental property here in Buffalo, close by, right on our street. So I can do a little bit of plumbing, a little electrical, a little bit of carpentry and painting and things like that. But I know now just where I can get to and say, no, I'm going to hire somebody to do that work. I don't have the time and inclination. I got a lot of tools to be able to do it, but I think I've sort of said, okay, I can do the easy things. But I think it's just sort of part of what I've always sort of done to learn. If I don't have to pay for it, I can do those little projects around the house.
Yep. All right. So what's next for you in this new phase of life? Do you have any goals or aspirations?
Yeah, we're going away in the end of May, um, off to England for 10 days. We did a cruise in September, Viking cruise from Budapest to
Nice.
Vienna to
Fun.
Prague, and we rented a place in Florida for the month of February. My wife, about 3 years ago, said, "Look, I want to get out of Buffalo during some time in the wintertime." I said, "Okay, find a place," which we did on the East Coast, and it was great. There's tennis courts, so I can get up and play tennis with groups. In the morning, there's a little par 3 golf course, short 9 holes that weaves through, and I can walk over and hook up games easy and just sort of, beat a golf ball around a little bit. And the beach is there that she loves, and so that's been, and we're doing it next year again too. So uh, I've got some other ideas of some trips. We sort of chat I traveled all over the world when I worked in the U.S. and I was in international sales. So I've done a lot of traveling. Now I want to travel for pleasure and to see some sights and good food.
So why would anyone want to get out of Buffalo in February?
I
I
don't
don't
know.
get it.
Yeah. Well, I grew up skating in my backyard in the middle of downtown Buffalo. And I skated from the time I was 6 years old and played in high school and college at a fairly high level. And I don't really put the skates on anymore. I blew my shoulder out playing squash. I have a shoulder replacement, and so that's that and immunocompromised kept me off the squash court. But now I'm playing tennis. It's sore occasionally, but I'm playing. It doesn't
So you
bother
talk
my
about
golf game. That's good.
so you talk about skating. Was it hockey your sport then in
Yes.
college?
Yes.
Oh, nice. So are you a Boston fan, or I'm from Pittsburgh, so
Oh, are
I'm a
you?
Penguins fan.
You're a Penguins fan?
Oh yeah,
Oh
absolutely,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So,
I used to when the Sabres started back in gosh, it was I think 72 in Buffalo. Um, my dad had season tickets and it was close by. It was in the old War Memorial Stadium, the Odd rather, and and you sat very close to the ice. And the Sabres had an exciting team with Rene Robert and Jill Perreault and
Oh yeah.
Rick Martin, and it was fabulous to watch. And as I got older, I don't have season tickets. My dad, once they moved to the new stadium, I think maybe he gave them up before then. But I guess I'm kind of a fair weather Sabres fan. Um, if they're doing well, I'll pay attention. If they're not, I may look at a game recap, but that's about it. The Bills, however, attract a lot of attention in Buffalo, as I'm sure you're sort of
Oh
aware.
yeah.
And when the Bills are playing well, it's really fun to watch and get excited about seeing that. I'm not the kind of guy that puts on all the Bills stuff. I'm just try to keep my wife calm during the game and sit back and watch football. And with obviously Josh Allen here, it's been really exciting since the Jim Kelly years and Thurman Thomas and those guys. It's kind of fun again. So
Yeah.
yeah.
My sister went to college with Daryl Talley, and so I
Oh
followed the
really?
Bills a lot when he
Where
was
what
with
where
them
was that?
at West Virginia
Yeah.
University.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was so much fun to watch when I was in high school, and I'd go, down to the games and see him. And
Yeah.
I think it was Delbert Fowler was the other defensive end. That those guys would just be back and forth, intercepting passes and
Yeah.
sacking the quarterback, and it was just such an exciting
Yeah.
time. And then
Yeah.
he did so well in Buffalo.
Yeah.
So
I
that
went,
was
the
great.
Bills went to four straight, and I went to the last one, hoping, okay, maybe this, four times charm. Not quite, but
Yeah.
that's a pretty impressive track record for that era to be four
Mhm.
straight. Now it would be even harder. I mean, Kansas City's been our nemesis.
Yeah.
But with free agency and salary caps and the movement of players, it's a little harder. But I think if you have a strong leader in Josh Allen and that group they put together, and really they stress character. There are no prima donnas, I think, at this point, which is really good.
Yeah, we'll see how my Steelers do if they can ever
What's that?
find an old enough quarterback for them. See how my Steelers do if they can find an old
Oh,
enough
that's right.
quarterback.
Yeah, I think I read something about them looking. They had a couple names that were on the radar.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers is supposed to be signing with them. It's like, bring in an old quarterback. Maybe we just break down and bring in Kelly. Or not Kelly, not Kelly, but Brady.
Oh
You
yeah.
got me on Kelly. So, all right. Well, we have a question we ask of all our guests.
Mhm.
And what are you doing, especially after your battle with non-Hodgkin lymphoma, to age well?
To do what? Age?
To age well.
Age well? Not think about it.
Okay. That's a good
As much as
approach.
I can, with a little bit of graying hair and a spot up here where I'm losing, and go to the dermatologist. I think it's just living a good life, being happy. Just try to find that comfort level for yourself, for your spouse, for your friends, for your family, and appreciate it. I've heard so much about I'm living my best life, and that means different things to different people. To me, it's enjoying where I am. And I have to say, I think, I oftentimes think, gosh, I wish I knew what I know now. I wish I knew when I was back in college. And I think a lot of people, wish that as well. I'm a lot wiser about my time and friends and perspective. And I think I have an appreciation for that too, from experiences. We all learn from our mistakes. Luckily, I didn't have any big ones.
Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners about your journey or a message of hope?
Well, what I said was that with science now changing and science on the forefront, there's so much more coming along. And I really sincerely believe we're on the new frontier of medicine in this country. As long as we can keep the funding, and I do donate to Roswell, and I've ridden in the ride and accumulated some dollars through that, is to really support, if you can, those institutions that are doing that research, that are caring for patients, and knowing that there's more out there. And hopefully we'll kick this at some point in the future.
Well, Chris, this has been a really heartwarming and fascinating conversation. I really appreciate having you on today. I appreciate your attitude. And on this podcast, we often talk about our 6 pillars of aging well, which is to exercise and get physical activity, eat a healthy diet, maintain a healthy body composition, don't smoke, get good sleep hygiene. And most importantly, I think we've been learning the importance of strong social connections. And I think you underscored that today, just kind of talking about your attitude of gratitude, the sense of kind of living in the moment and, just living life to its fullest and enjoying the relationships that you have and just making wise choices. This has been a great conversation. I appreciate you having me on, and I'm so glad that this has been a successful therapy for you.
Thank you.
And we certainly wish you all the best and just keep aging well.
Great. Thank you for contacting me and doing this. And hopefully that people who hear it, see it, will come away with a sense of hope and appreciation. And anything I can do to help, as I say, glad to.
Thank you for listening. I hope you benefited from today's podcast. And until next time, keep aging well.